a sound comes that accompanies this comforting gesture, just let it come and speak itself or sound itself. Oh. Oh.
Hello, welcome to DanceWise, releasing trauma through movement and expressive arts. My name's Venetia Campbell, and today I'm going to be talking to Joanna Novosedlik from Ontario, Canada. Joanna is a creative depth life coach and naked voice facilitator in training. She's a classical vocal musician, devotional music singer, teacher and life coach who shares her passion for helping clients find their authentic soul connection through vocal sound, authentic movement, somatic arts-based and nature therapy. Her life mission is to be a healing force in the world and a mirror of the joy of the divine in all beings. Hello, Joanna. It's great.
Hello.
Great to see you. And you've just been showing me a little demonstration, which we're going to see later at the end of our chat together. And you call yourself a creative depth life coach. And from what I just saw, I can see the depth, definitely, from just that little tiny snippet you showed me of using your voice to help people to reconnect to themselves. But before we go into more depth on that, perhaps you could just explain for us, wind right back to the very beginning and how you got onto this path and, you know, how you got to this point now.
That's a great question. I think back to my own childhood where anxiety was a big part of my experience. My mom says I was born that way. I had a very stable family life, but the anxiety of being in a physical body was high for me, and being that sense of vulnerability in a physical world. Um, and so I think my own experience throughout the years of managing my traumas, or my small traumas, my larger traumas, my anxiety, really led me to want to work with the arts, in particular, artistic or expressive arts, as a method, or a doorway into managing my own struggles in life. And of course, I started off as in music, theater. I studied music professionally. I'm a professional vocal soloist in the classical realm, and eventually segued into kirtan and that end of things, which also simultaneously was leading me to want to use voice as a healing instrument. I've always, although I started in vocal performance many years ago in my university years, I knew by the end of the university years, that I wouldn't be a performer per se, like that wouldn't be my only focus, but that I would want to use music and voice as therapy with people, and help people to claim their own voice, as a therapeutic tool, as a healing tool, as our most powerful healing tool that we actually have, since we are vibratory beings. And so that switch happened fairly early on in my career of knowing I would want to make my way towards that. Music therapy was fairly new at that time. It was really brand new, that whole term. So that's been a lifelong process since then to really explore what can we do with sound, what can we do with movement, and how do we integrate these into a process that will aid people in managing their stressors, managing their traumas.
Mm, mm. And where do you work from? I know sometimes you work from the Niskaya Movements Arts Centre, but you're based in Canada, aren't you? So how do you reach people?
Yes, I have groups that meet locally, but also online. A lot of online work since COVID, of course. Um, and I'm more local, I would say, in terms of physically local, but have been working internationally with people online and through Niskaya online as well. So that opened for me in the last few years to be able to do all of this, have a farther reach with people interested in this kind of work.
Mm-hmm. Because you're also an energy worker as well, aren't you? And you bring in the arts as well, which is part of the creative depth life coaching. It's not just voice and sound, it's
Right.
everything.
Right. So I mean, I'm a person who, over the years, has studied various modalities to some extent, some more than others, because I really find that that's part of my personality is the eclectic vision I have. But I really find that things, every modality has its gem, its particular gift, and when you're working with someone, they may not resonate with a particular type of process. Like they may not resonate with the art, the process art. They may resonate more with sounding. They may resonate less with the sounding, with their voice, and more with the movement aspect. So it's very individual, and I find to be effective at addressing, people's needs and goals in healing. I have to have I kind of naturally, but also need to have this plethora, like this a palette of different um, processes that I can offer.
Mm,
And that's something I think that is that awareness that we need to have these other facets to work with, I think is growing in the field of self-transformation, where talk therapy, for instance, has a value of its own, but without a somatic practice attached to it, or a healing process that involves body in some form, the talk alone doesn't heal the core issue or the core experience, because that gets stored in the body. So we need to release, to move it, to process it, so that it has a voice, it can tell us what it is that we need to know, so that we can move the energy and it doesn't remain stagnant.
mm,
So I guess that's where my it's more my natural proclivity to want to move while I sound. Well, it's natural, it's innate for all humans. We just tend in this part of the world, the West, to narrow it down to stillness and singing, or like all of these categories that we try to fit into. And whereas for me, I understand it, we need to flow between them. How can we flow between them? And that's a life lesson in itself. How I
mm,
can flow between form and freedom is my favorite way to say it, which comes from anthroposophy. The form, we need the structure, but we also need the freedom to move in and out of the structure. So how do we do that? And we're doing it every moment of our lives in reality. So, from the perspective of anthroposophy, when you work with, there is a therapeutic end of that work as well, and it's used in the Waldorf schools. It's, I guess, what we call special ed in mainstream education. It's there's parts of it that are similar to that. So, I studied some of that and used some of these indications created by Steiner and those who have followed his work to work with children with special needs, who have learning disabilities or who have emotional challenges. I continue to work in a private practice, a private function of working with them one to one, using some of those indications. And what I find is that work feeds really well into other things like yoga, that I'm a yoga teacher, different movement modalities, because eurythmy, which is unique to anthroposophy and to the Steiner schools, is again another process that integrates mind, body, spirit, all of the aspects of being, all of the bodies, because we have several bodies, both on the energy level and the physical body, etc. To really essentially bring it all towards the one goal of harmonizing, or bringing fluidity between the bodies, or ability to keep all of those bodies active and in the process of living. Because when we experience trauma or some sort of a neurological deficit, or something we may, an extreme illness that might have caused uh, uh, um, something not to function properly in the body, a body system or part of the brain that doesn't function properly, then we're really needing processes that we're going to reintegrate and recalibrate, or train the brain how to compensate for the losses. And this is a pretty broad subject. I mean, there are many ways to approach it, but I find that with eurythmy, for instance, which is sound through movement, like how does sound look when we move, is a really big influencer for my work with sound and healing and movement, because we feel from a particular vowel sound, as you saw in my demonstration, its qualities. And so those qualities resonate with a particular um, um, organ system in the body, as in the chakra system. The vowel sounds have each other own quality of healing, what they open within us. And when we work with those sounds through the gesture and the sounding, we can it's sort of like storing up that quality within you. And if there's a lack in an area of your body, or for instance, if you have a pain in the body somewhere and you want to address that pain, then I would go to that area of the body and essentially sing to it. But you would ask it for its own sound. What sound will balance this pain, or allow the pain to um, become to process itself, or to flow? Because stagnancy or pain is always associated with a stagnant energy, or an energy that's gotten stuck. So if I have a pain in my shoulder, I'm going to want to ask it, what does it need um, to be unstuck, essentially. And I can find a sound for that. I can sound that into that area, and the sound will affect not just the physical, but the energetic fields that are associated with that area. I can use that, also extend that into the movement. Of course, I can extend it into an artistic expression on paper with paint and moving my hands in paint. And there are rhythmic processes associated with that, which of course are going to give us a particular along with being vibratory bodies, our vibrations respond to rhythm. And so, everything vibrates, that's a rhythm it's creating, and it's a consistent rhythm. So if I move into a rhythm with my body, and whether I'm painting with it, or whether I'm moving with it, or whether I'm just tapping with it, those are rhythms that recalibrate, or rebalance a section of the body, or a part of our being that is out of balance, that isn't resonating its normal way. So that's a lot of why the integration of movement and sound and a somatic practice that involves the body is so important. I can't do it in my head only. I can't do it with in other words, I can't just think about it, or analyze it. That's not going to move the energy. So we're energy beings, and we have to work with that energy to heal.
Mm.
So my work with children, getting back to my work with children, I mean, they're natural movers. So, especially in the early years, the best thing we can do for them is allow them as much space to move as much as they need to move, in the early years, particularly because everything is being experienced through the whole body. So I'm not just, tasting this nice little taste. This taste is affecting my entire, I'm a sponge as a child. I'm a sponge that's just absorbing everything around me. So all the vibrations of every other vibratory thing in my life is affecting my vibration, and teaching me, um, and allowing my capacities to grow in whatever area that uh, is happening, which is body, mind, and spirit all at the same time. So yes, so I have worked with children one to one that way, and I honestly find it so easy to work with them because they respond openly, generally speaking, to new experience, to these playful exercises or processes that appeal to their own natural creativity and curiosity. Um, and it becomes really important to relate on their level with how they take the world in, and what resonates for them, and to find what works for them.
Mm.
So there's a lot of reading, intuitive reading into what each individual child needs. I mean, there are any number of amazing somatic processes and artistic processes that they can that can be used in this work. And is, I suppose too, with working with adults, that we're also relating to their inner child at the same time, of course. And so that ability to play is often something we've lost as adults or have had sublimated. So there is that aspect to the work, that when you involve the body, it is automatically kind of asking it to play. And that's something that in and of itself is a beautiful process to facilitate the unfolding for a person's ability to play again. And how do we, because it introduces an ease that even the body recognizes, from early on, that, oh yes, okay, this is a different thing we're doing now. This is different than sitting in my chair and doing the job and whatever. It's a whole different thing. Even sitting in your chair and how you're sitting in your chair is an active process. Even if it doesn't look like you're moving much, there's a lot going on with the body. So it's even incremental movements shift your whole perspective. For instance, working with depression and anxiety, I mean, it a little small movement or shift can have profound effect when you're done doing it with awareness, and when you're fully committed to that movement. It's very interesting. So it takes us into areas like brain sensory integration processes. I have some training with an occupational therapist who on the cutting edge of neuroscience. We're finding the same thing that they're finding in that part of the field is the brain is plastic. It can neuroplasticity is what they call it, but you can retrain. It can learn. You can create new neural pathways that compensate for things such as learning deficit, or even hearing loss, or particular physical challenges. The brain can learn. And so, for instance, something I find really fascinating, working with children on the autism spectrum, um, in some of the understanding around what autism is, what it actually is, there's some thought that it has to do with how the brain processes information, and that for people on the spectrum, the brain does not remember, in a sense, a particular experience in the same way we would, or process it in the same way, I should say, in the same way that a brain that is not affected by autism would process. So one thought is that experiences come to a person on the spectrum as if they were new all the time. When they're young, or when they're first experiencing life, because it is new for all of us as very young children. Everything is new. We're learning all the time. But the brain integrates that and remembers certain aspects from the same experience, and then later when you come back to a similar experience, it learn, figures, oh yeah, that's like this experience. And so then there's a familiarity about it. So we build trust in our environment, not to shock us all the time, right? Or for instance, but with a brain that's been diagnosed as on the spectrum, the experience is not familiar. The brain doesn't seem to remember as the same way when we had that experience last. So things tend to be new all the time. Like you never have a familiarity at varying degrees, obviously, depending on how severe. And so you're having to constantly adapt, adjust, take in new information, and that's extremely overwhelming in a constantly changing world. And so some of the stimming, the self-stimming that you'll notice children or people with autism doing is providing a rhythmic movement that is totally consistent, and they become extremely adept at the consistency. Like, I mean, you could probably measure it, mathematically, and it's always very consistent. And that's called self stimulation. But really what they're doing is they're creating something consistent. This is not changing, and I'm controlling this. So I can control this part of my experience, and it calms down the nervous system. It calms me down because this is not changing. This is just going to stay. So it's like rocking in a rocking chair. But what we are learning about through neuroscience is that this rhythmic, simple gesturing, particular rhythmic movements are creating neural pathways to the brain that heal, reintegrate sensory input that was not integrated properly in childhood and early childhood. So it can be done at any age and have its effects. So, for instance, working with anxiety, I've been working with my anxiety over the years with the brain sensory processes. And they're very simple things, like there are rocking motions that you do in a particular prone posture. They're specific to specific issues that you're dealing with. And it immediately brings relief. It's the most direct relief I've experienced, other than along with sounding, that goes right to the core cause. So you don't have to know what it is or what caused it. For instance, if you're dealing with trauma, you don't have to know what the original trauma is. You don't have to analyze it. You don't have to even speak of it in these kinds of processes that I do. It's all done at the core level, and it's all integrating. The shift happens because we're moving to the core cause, and we're addressing it with that rhythmicity, with that sound, or whatever it is we're doing, that brings not only a calming of the nervous system, but also has its effect of rebalancing. So, okay, now I'm back into the rhythm. It's like when you're dancing and you lose your foot, if you lose your sense of the beat for a while, and it's like you're disoriented, and then you come back into the beat. Oh yeah, there it is, I can feel it now. So yeah, it's a lot more complex than that of what it does, but that's a simple explanation, I suppose, of how this works in the body.
Yes. And would you say that you said earlier that you are highly sensitive, and do you think your highly sensitive or empathic nature helped you to be more perceptive with the people you worked with, and particularly children in that case, because you could feel everything maybe overwhelming at times, which contributed to your anxiety?
Yes. It's kind of interesting because I didn't realize I was this. There were no terms for highly sensitive people or empaths when I was, until really more recently. In the last, I'm not sure when that all initiated. I would say the whole empath understanding, but I'm going to say within the last 20 years. So um, I just read people this way my whole life, and I just assumed everybody was like that, could read the subtleties in a face, for instance, like the subtle shifts, and anticipate and understand what that meant. What was that energy that was coming at me? And it was for self-preservation more than anything, is because I as a child, because I wanted to, I wanted to know what I'm up against. So what am I going to be dealing with in the energy, and how am I going to manage that energy? Because heavy energies and intense heaviness, particularly heavy or dark energies, deplete. They have an effect on everyone. Everyone feels these things. They don't necessarily consciously feel them. And for those of us who are highly sensitive, we kind of get a double dose, in a sense. It goes right through us. So there are methods and things that I have to do to be able to hold space for a person and whatever they're experiencing, without getting involved with it past a certain point. So yes, reading subtlety in how they move. It's really in the face. You can read so much in just the subtle shifts around the mouth. It's very interesting to me, and how that tells me, gives me information about what's really operating, because you can't hide, you can only hide to a certain extent what you're feeling, what's going on internally. To someone who reads detail, it's written all over you. You know, how you sit, how you walk through the room, how you sing the song, how, not technically how, but what am I hearing? For instance, if I'm working in the old days, I would say when I was teaching music, voice and music lessons, more traditional voice and music lessons, I was always fascinated by the other aspects of it, not so much the going to learn a song, but why is this person having such trouble singing fluidly, or why are they concerned about when they hear their voice? It's like they back off from it. Oh, you know, so things that I would read in a person, their confidence level, their self-esteem level, that would be like the basic stuff that I began began this quest of understanding at a deeper level what was going on for a person if they couldn't sound or trust their sound or even like their sound of their own voice, or all those kinds of things that led me into the further work. So yeah, intuitive connection. I think we do a whole lot on that level without realizing it. Most of us, we're you can watch it in a room, which when someone walks in, you can see the energy change. I can see and sense. And I think we do this, but we just do it unconsciously. I think some of us are just more conscious of what, because we're all capable of operating at a very, very sensate, very, very clear awareness level of these capacities. They're human capacities, but it just, for some of us, maybe we were in present incarnation, maybe many lifetimes we've developed this capacity to open, and it really is. It takes time because you have to have dealt with enough of your own stuff to be able to be that sensitive and not crumble, because you will be overcome by it if if not, there isn't someone to help you navigate it and figure out how, okay, how do I rebalance because I'm feeling, you know, this intensity. And I think that's a big part of the trauma that we're all experiencing right now after COVID, or during COVID, and this whole, we're feeling, not only do we hear the news, but we're feeling the energy of each other. We're all connected, so there's no way not to feel it. And all of these modalities are going to are becoming, and are very critically important to helping us manage all of that influx of energy, let alone the knowledge of what it's associated with, and the implications for our lives, and how it affects us.
It's like the collective trauma is clearing out from the
Huge.
human race, and it's, yeah, they need the people to help people navigate through that, and not identify with it as, you know, as necessarily their own stuff, but it's just these clouds of it out there.
Yes, and I mean the microcosm and macrocosm of the reality too, because what I'm doing here, what each of us is doing here, is also showing up there. Is that, you know, how do I recognize myself in my process, you know, in the world process, because it's all happening at the same time, and we're all at different places with it. So shadow work is a very, very big part of it. It's integral to any kind of healing work, but conscious shadow work. So meeting my shadow, meeting my the parts of me that are wounded, or the parts of me that just haven't grown quite yet. You know, they need some help to grow, and just bringing them to consciousness already has initiated the process of movement, of growing, of integrating, of healing, whatever it is that we're working with in the shadow. So yeah, we've got our collective shadow, we've got our personal shadow, and the best thing we can do for the planet and for the human family and the whole, you know, beings, the beyond human family on the planet, is our own personal healing process and our own shadow work, because that has the ripple effect to all others. We're healing ancestral pain. There's so many, so much we carry. It's amazing, and we're at a time when that healing can happen fairly quickly. Actually, by comparison, it can happen when you're ready, quite quickly, with intention, with your, you know, intentional conscious work and self-transformative work. That's being aided by non-physical guides. You know, if you want to talk about other realms and other beings who assist us in this amazing experiment that Earth is, but that's getting into the cosmic picture, so that can be overwhelming for some people in and of itself. But yeah, there's a lot going on. Let's say there's just a lot going on.
And you also work with people remotely, don't you, as well, with sound? You haven't got to be in the room for the sound to, or the sound therapy to actually work with somebody. You can do that.
Yeah, and now there's two aspects to what I do, because there are various ways I can offer this. Most predominantly, I work with, or let's say, the aspect that I can do everything by distance, but one of the things that I do is actually sound for people. So I would, if somebody's going through a tough time, I'll say, well, I'll send you healing sound. So then at my end, I would sing particular. There's a lot of free form to it, a lot of intuitive form. I work with their guides, and my guides on the spiritual realm connect up and help me to sound through me the particular sounds or words, or sometimes songs, but most of the time it's free form. Their name, I would sing their name to them, and I can record it and then send it to them if they want to actually hear it physically. They don't have to, because it's a distance healing. That's one aspect of my work. But the really the goal for me in my work, the thing that I want most for others, is that they use their own voice. So when I guided myself in the little snippet that you see, when I'm on my own, I'm actually acting as both the participant and the facilitator. Normally I would not be sounding, the participant would be sounding and doing all the processes. So I'm just guiding with my words how to go through that process. So yeah, it's not healing for them, it's but by them. So they're doing their own sound. So yeah, that's done, and that can be done one-to-one or in group settings as well. And we have particular processes we use when we're in a group that's unique to group settings. And yeah, it can be done virtually or in person.
I mean, that's the one thing that's good here, isn't it? People aren't limited now to get the help they need. Even 20 years ago, you had to physically be somewhere to get that support, but not only just from Zoom, which has brought everybody together, but it's much easier to do the work remotely now. As you're saying, you haven't got to physically be together for that benefit to happen.
Yes, exactly. It's really interesting actually to see. And then sometimes if I can sound, if I can't work with the person directly and I'm sounding for them or on their behalf, it's interesting to hear the effect afterwards, for them to tell me how that was for them, because they're not knowing when I'm doing it. I'm just doing it at a particular time, and then afterwards I can get the feedback of how it was. Did they feel a shift, or and depending on how sensitive the person is, they can identify certain things that on an energetic level, on an energy level. So yeah, that's so, and I think that that's also what we're evolving as a human race. We're evolving that ability to feel energy. So we're all becoming sensitives over time. Where we can feel it, where we don't have to touch something to feel its energy, or we don't have to be in someone's presence directly to. That's something that's been ongoing for forever. But it's going to be. It's interesting to see the awareness level rising around that. Oh, maybe we can, so then we can affect things from a distance as well. We don't have to, we working with the energy bodies really is what we're learning as we evolve.
And on the, for those who like the science, the people who are involved with the quantum physics level,
Right.
they're now
Yes.
finally linking that things which were in the realm of the mystics of the past and the yogis, it's now scientific.
Beautifully expressed, yes. Thank goodness. Because the forerunners of all of this work, it's been an uphill climb. It's an uphill climb in a lot of ways, yeah. And even you see the division of those who are ready for that to be a reality, and those who are not quite ready to go there yet. And that's okay, because we all get there in our own time. We have to do it in our own time.
Like blossoms on a tree. So you were saying form and freedom. I like that idea. And you mentioned anthroposophy, which people don't know, that's behind the Waldorf schools and a lot of other, biodynamic farming and a whole host of other things, but in this context, and also eurythmy. And Rudolf Steiner, who was behind anthroposophy, he was very big on freedom in the sense of the free expression of the human essence, if you like. So that seems to be what carries through into your work. Can you explain a bit about how anthroposophy influences your outlook in what you teach?
Yes, definitely. So I trained as to be a Waldorf teacher, which is the educational end of anthroposophy and Rudolf Steiner's work. And what I found there is, of course, that it is a spiritual path, and it is a life path. It's the deep dive, and it really explains to me in depth the whole evolution of humanity, and what we are, the vision of humanity, and our task, in a sense, of being incarnated beings is on the planet. So it's like the bigger picture, and how that translates for me into um, spiritual exercises and processes that integrate mind, body, spirit, that use the head, heart, and hands. So I mean, that's again a very integrated model of, we're not going to just live in our heads. We're not going to be only material, associated with our material reality, but we're going to be able to integrate and flow through all aspects of being. So that really resonated with me, the whole anthroposophical pathway, and how we're 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 constantly evolving in that way, and discovering our own, both our unique identity, our unique facet of the whole, and then how we belong to the whole, the relationship to the whole. So that it's a pretty it's the most in-depth dive, I suppose I could say, for me.
You said you had Waldorf inspired, because you haven't quite completed the full training to be a Waldorf teacher, but you are also involved with forest schools. So how do you bring your work into working with children in forest schools?
Yes, and I have always been deeply connected to nature myself, and the healing properties and energies. I mean, again, it's a relationship, um, through the natural world to source for me, from a spiritual perspective. So we're just surrounded and filled by that source love that is in every particle of every part of the universe and of the earth herself. And the earth herself has her evolution, her spiritual evolution that she's going through. It's a mutual evolution, and we can support, we are supported and can also offer support to all the beings that are evolving around us. So the more than human animal, the plant world, everything is evolving, and we are deeply connected to all. So when we move into that realm and recognize consciously, relate to, for instance, tree work, working with trees is one of my favorite things. We are connecting to their process, and they are connecting to ours. So we help each other evolve. We it's a mutual support of that learning, of that growth, and that evolution. And so for me, I'm not really sure where I first became interested in forest school, but as soon as I heard the term, I knew. I think would have been through, yeah, it would have been through Waldorf circles, because their kindergarten program in particular is very. There is a version of a Kinderforest in Europe, which is where forest schools originated. So that would have been where I first came in contact with that concept and that practice. So making sure children are in nature in those early years, particularly because nature has everything in it to teach us what we need to learn in our physical development and in our emotional, spiritual development. It's all there. And it's the most natural place for humans to be, in a sense of relating to the fact that we are embodied beings. We're not just beings we're not just beings sort of touching in once in a while. We're fully incarnated beings. So we relate to our physical world as deeply as we do to any other aspect. And it all supports our growth. So I took forest school training, forest school practitioner training, out of a forest school in Guelph for a year. And I work, presently work part-time in a forest school out in the county, but I've also run my own Waldorf inspired forest school preschool program through my home, just on a very part-time basis, with children in the early years. And this for me is, it's kind of like a marriage of many worlds. Like, I'm always pulling in different worlds together and trying to see how I can balance it so that I experience these things from these facets, from different angles. And sounding and singing in nature, singing to the trees with the children. I mean, I do that whether I have children around me or not, because that's my thing. Singing in nature is probably, for me, one of the greatest sources of healing, and rebalancing, for me to give and receive that love that is just so prevalent in the natural world. So yeah, so I find I have studied some eco spirit or eco art, um, eco art,
Echo
I
art.
should say, eco art. Yeah, I always
Not echo.
echo because I'm a sound person. Anyway, eco art training. I've only taken introductory courses of eco art, online, and this plunges you right into natural nature, and co-creating with uh, nature beings, elemental beings, when you create intuitive art or process art. That's and that experience, and taking clients through that experience with nature, if they have an openness to working with nature, has been extremely helpful, I think, in a powerful experience for again, this feeling the support of the natural world, because the natural world is simply a reflection of, to me, what I would call divine source. And so we're loved well through that world if we make that connection. And unfortunately, a lot of in modern culture, we've lost a lot of that connection, and it's really at the heart of our ills, because we haven't remembered our relationship to the whole, and to the world that we are physically a part of, that's got many energies on non-physical levels as well. So I mean, I've worked with Paralandra gardening, where you contact the soil divas, and ask them what this particular plot of land needs to have planted in it, so that it has a balance of energy, and heals whatever came on the land before, if there were any traumas in the land itself. And so that, because when we walk into an area, like, we can feel it. If we go into a place where there's been a battle on the planet, you feel a certain energy, and if it hasn't been resolved, then it's still there. So some people will say their house is haunted, or whatever. There are energies that are still hanging around that may not be conducive to being, it may be something that we feel that as not a positive, or something that needs to be healed. So that's a whole realm in and of itself. But I think if this work that I do can be taken into nature for those clients who are open to it, especially children who are automatically, if you take them outdoors and allow them to roam, they're gonna come back into themselves in a much stronger way than if they don't have that access, if they're only on screens, for instance, all day. But it's a whole again, an awakening of capacities that can't happen through technology or through uh, it has to happen with a whole body experience, and nature automatically invites you to a whole body experience of who you are.
Mm. As you said, I think it's quite alarming the amount of children who aren't playing outside. For example, now it was sunny the other day, and I thought something's missing, and I realised that I couldn't hear any. It was a weekend. I couldn't hear any children playing in the neighbourhood or anything. I thought, well, where are all the children? Because there's a school nearby, but couldn't hear a thing. And I thought, God, they must be all inside on their screens, and that's the way it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, there's a huge movement now, though, of outdoor schooling. Of course, through COVID prompted that, because all of a sudden, then there was, oh, maybe we being outdoors, spaced away from each other, but with air circulate, like the natural thing that happens with air outdoors, we aren't as concerned about COVID. And so that movement, the forest school movement, is really taking off at this
Great.
point, thankfully. Or models thereof, or outdoor classroom. When I was in the school system for about 14 years as a primarily music teacher in the elementary level. And I was always trying to figure out ways to get the kids outside. And in those years, or those earlier on, you could still take them out to if there was woods across the road, you could walk across, and you didn't have to get parental forms. And it was not so such a litigious time. And so we were able to take risks like that, which were natural for how we grew up, where you could be outdoors for part of your lesson or whatever. And that went underground for a long time, and then now I'm seeing, of course, a resurgence of that, and that's a big plus for children, to even just being out in the air, out in natural air, not confined in rooms, is a huge shift. It creates a huge shift, and it opens them to learning in a way that uh, nothing, other types of learning, other types of atmospheres can't do. They're more confining, or uh yeah, it's a big explanation around that, but yeah, it's
So if somebody decides that they'd like to find out more, can you just give me a bit of an example what the structure would be they might be looking at? Is there a sort of particular structure you would be looking at with them?
right. In a particular session, I can give us an example. We will always work initially with breath work, breathing, and getting into the body experience. Sounding will be part of it. Sometimes it involves sounding. It always will involve free form sound of some type, but it will be associated with chakras, or with parts of the body that might be ailing them. That sounding process involves many things, actually, the sounding process. We will incorporate some sort of gesture or movement with the sound, to unlock awarenesses around what might be causing a pain in the body, for instance. We can go into a bilateral art experience, which is again an intuitive experience, a process art. It isn't about creating a beautiful piece of work. It's about the process of art used for the purposes of self-discovery, and healing. And sometimes other elements are brought in, drumming, wherever the person is interested. Eco art, working in nature with the natural elements as well. Um, there are aspects of um, dance that can sometimes be used, more interpretive or free form. There's sacred circle dance, there's eurythmy, there's a lot of aspects of movement, that different approaches through movement. There's yoga, vocal yoga, which is sounding with yoga postures. There's a lot of applications of movement, and it depends on the person and their comfort zone, and where they're at. And of course, connecting with their own healing guides, if they're into the spiritual realm and understand that they're being guided or helped by those who are non-physical beings that are guides, then I would incorporate that into the process as well.
Mm.
Mantra sounding, mantras, and creating your own personal mantra. There's so many applications and within these categories, there's a lot of subcategories, but just to give an idea of what.
Fantastic, great, okay. Well, I'll put the links to all the different websites and things, and for your own as well, up on there. Yeah, thank you so much for talking to me today. And we're going to finish with you giving a little demonstration of sounding.
I want to say that, with under the umbrella of creative depth life coaching, um, that there are different ways to approach a self-transformation. And so if a person is wanting to work with their own shadow work, or healing work at any level, whether it's a physical healing, there's always an emotional component to the physical healing, of course. Then the whole process really comes down to an essence experience of reclaiming your authentic self. I wanted to touch on that just before I go into the actual process. Um, because everything that we experience challenges us to come back to a core identity, or to build a core identity of who is our true self in all of this, and what really is important here. What is the meaning of what I'm experiencing? So the voice, finding our voice really is also symbolic of finding our inner wisdom. And that involves the body wisdom as well, because the body has its own wisdom, its own memory, its own way of healing. It can heal anything, but we have to figure out how we're going to align with its wisdom and trust its wisdom, because we've been taught to put our authority and trust in, uh, experts outside ourselves who know more than we do, and we've lost that sense of I can access that information of how I need to heal from within, and I can weigh it or feel whether I resonate or align with a particular process by listening within. So that's why this work is so much a part of our whole journey. It's a very deep work to find your own true self, because it's been sublimated by what we've been taught, and what we've been told is okay to be and not be, and etc. All the controls and cultural norms and everything else that have us questioning who we are, and have us, not trusting who we are, and we're not safe to be who we are in this kind of world. So all of this work really is aimed at reclaiming an essence self, a true identity. What is your authentic self telling you in any given moment? And how do I access that without bypassing it, or discounting it, or asking someone else for their truth to guide my life? So when we're going through a process, I would first, with a client, I would first have them contact me. We would connect through usually Zoom, if it's not in person, a Zoom initial meeting. I could tell them what I have to offer. They can tell me what they're looking for, what their purpose was to seek out this kind of work, and we determine whether it looks like it might be a good fit in that initial meeting. And then if it looks like it would be, then I can give them a little sample of what we do in that initial meeting if they're not familiar with some of these things. And then we would just set up, we always set up an initial 3 sessions. There's no point in one session. It's not really going to help you see a process unfold. So we usually say 3 sessions initially are a really good idea. They can be over a period of a month or 2 months, however works. We try to keep it within a month, because you can again get kind of lost in the ethers in between sessions if it's too far apart. And then after that 3rd session, we assess again, would you like to continue? And then they commit to individual sessions after that, single sessions, and from then on to see where it goes.
Great. So okay. Well, I'll put the links to all the different websites and things for your own as well up on there. Yeah, thank you so much for talking to me today. And we're going to finish with you giving a little demonstration of sounding.
Okay, beautiful. So I'm just going to stand, and I'm often going to ask participants if they can, if they're able to stand when we do our processes. But all of this can be done sitting down as well, or even laying down, depending on a person's capacity. And so we're going to feel our feet in the ground, connected to Mama Earth, as if you're standing in your garden and you feel that soil beneath your toes. You're just squeezing the soil between your toes, maybe standing even in the mud or a little bit of soft, damp soil. And you feel your feet connected well to Mama Earth. And you feel a cord of light that comes down through the crown of your head and moves down through the spine and out through the root of the spine or the base of the spine, and connects down into the earth. So you have this beautiful cord of light, this silver light that connects you to Mama Earth. And we have our feet hip width apart and softness in the knees. And we're just going to connect with our breath. So we'll bring your hands to the heart, and we open as we breathe in, low shoulders and looking up. And then as we exhale, we bring the hands back to the heart. This expansion, opening, receiving the whole world, the warmth of the world into the wholeness of our being, and then releasing whatever we no longer need. And just allowing your breath to be deep and warm and gentle, lengthening the breath. Your arms or your gesture follows the length of the breath. So that at the end of my inhale, I'm ready to come forward with the hands to the heart on the exhale. Maybe one or two more of these. And listening into the silence for a moment, just with our hands on the heart. And then we're going to turn to the right side of our body. Let's draw a circle, an arc with the right arm. And a whole circle gets, it takes in our breath as well. So we inhale on the way up. This is where our lungs are completely full when we're reaching up. And as we exhale, we draw the other half of the circle, looking behind us. We just follow with our gaze as we engage the breath. Remember that the breath takes the gesture where it needs to go. So our gesture follows the breath. Inhaling on the way up, reaching and exhaling on the way back. I leave behind all of the past and I come fully into this now moment, standing with myself in now. And we can also add to that our sounds. So we're going to inhale with one movement for half the circle. And then on the exhale, emptying out, sighing from up to low, high to low. Oh, how relaxing that is. It's so lovely. And then we're going to come to center. And as always, we want to balance the sides of the body. So we'll go to the other side, the left side. We inhale. Inhaling, and your choice to whether you want to breathe only or whether you'd like to make the sound on the way back on the exhale. And I invite you to breathe and sound with an open mouth. So I'm inhaling on that surprise, that ah vowel. And exhaling on the same vowel. And I can add my sound. Ah. And once more. Ah. And then coming back to my heart. You take a moment to feel into your body the echo of what you just sounded and gestured. Where do you feel that echo in the body? Can you identify? Maybe it's a slight vibration, a flow somewhere in your body that feels good, feels like the ah feeling. And when you found a spot where that resonates well, just touch the spot on your body. So perhaps it resonates in my belly, in my solar plexus. So I'm going to place my hands there and just hold on to that awareness with my eyes closed of what's stirring in that solar plexus area. And continue with my deep breathing. In and out. And then sounding that sound again. And relating it to that place in the body where we feel it most, resonating most. Then we're going to invite you to sing or sound your own name in that space. So you would take a long, leisurely moment to just sound your name in a very elongated way in that space where you felt really well. Joanna. And then just feel into the echo in the silence of your own name, the echo of your own name as it flows through the silence afterwards. What does that echo feel like in your body, in your belly? You might hear your name internally being sung or sounded. Joanna. You might hear it internally. What feeling does it bring forward when you hear your name? Perhaps you want to sound it again. And can you let the body, the arms, the hands, the body express that feeling of your name? So sounding it again, how does your body move with that name? It might be a very small, subtle movement, incremental movement. It might be a larger movement. Just experiment with your own name and the vowel sounds and the consonant sounds in your name and how your body responds to those sounds. And then coming back to your breath in the silence, stillness. Notice how that effect of the movement aligns with the feeling in your belly or wherever that spot is in your body that your name resonates to. Just feel into that feeling of how your name lives in you. Thank you. So feel into that part of your body as you have your feet flat on the floor. And you feel into your spine. You feel into Mama Earth holding you and supporting you in the process. And you feel into your heart space. Breathing deeply. Notice where in your body there might be a feeling of tightness, or there might be a feeling you don't recognize. Allow space for that feeling, that tightness, that sensation. What does it feel like? Can you show it through your movement? What that sensation is. Is there a sound that it makes? What sound does it make? Just breathe into the sound, breathe into the feeling. Allow the sound to be heard inwardly.